This French film is perhaps the most popular French film in the world. I have no facts, but no doubts either. Bonjour et bienvenue. Je m'appelle Caro, je suis une musicienne et aujourd'hui on va parler d'un film et d'un homme qui changent ma vie. On va parler d'Amelie et de Yann Tiersen. Well, I can't remember any more French, so let's carry on in English, shall we? Today, my good YouTubian friends, we're going to talk about an amazing film with an amazing soundtrack that came out 20 years ago. Oh my god, I was 5 years old. So, early this year, on the 25th of April, Amelie celebrated its 20th anniversary, and I can't believe it wasn't really mentioned, or if it was, where the hell was I that I didn't hear about it? Well, you've been avoiding people for a while. Must be kind of lonely. I'm not lonely, I simply enjoy being alone. Plus, we're still in a pandemic. That sounds a bit pathetic. You're pathetic. Well, I'm you, so technically. Anyway, this movie holds a very special place in my heart because much like the epiphany I had when I was 16 and I heard the music from a commercial and I just knew that I wanted to do that for the rest of my life, even though I've been second guessing what that means exactly, this film and that man are a big part of why I decided to become a musician. You mean you didn't do it for its incredible perks of a life full of uncertainty, no job security, and the permanent impression the world has of musicians as being lazy and sort of a good for nothing while we battle for scraps and are constantly being told that we will never amount to anything, until one day people actually start to like us, or at least one of us, and then they proceed to glorify them until they've received fame and money, only to resent them later on. And even though nobody understands the purpose of music or life, if enough people decide that you're not good enough, then it becomes accepted as the truth. And that brings us back to who is considered as less valuable in the eyes of society, and generally, musicians find themselves very high on that list. No, I didn't do it for that. Okay, what the Pessimistic ideas aside, there are some piano pieces that I would bet 50 pesos that the majority of people have heard at least once in their lives. No. We're not talking about the deaf man, that's for another video. I'm talking about songs that you might have heard perhaps on a viral YouTube video, or the cat version that someone with way too much time in their hands made for us. Or perhaps when you went to the mall and there was a piano on display and there was this kid who inevitably had to go and poke at the keys and play the piece he or she had spent the last 2 months practicing and drilling the melody into his higher mind, and their entire family consequently. I was that kid. And this is that piece. You see, when I was about 14 years old, one of my cousins who happened to introduce me to a lot of great films invited me one day to a movie, and we saw my first French film. Are you gonna make a joke? I was, but I can't think of anything. Okay, back to me. This French film is perhaps the most popular French film in the world. I have no facts, but no doubts either. Le Fabuleux Destin d'Amélie Poulain is a romantic comedy, and don't we love those movies? This film was directed by Jean-Pierre Jeannette. It was nominated for 70 awards. 5 of those were the most desired golden naked men statues we know by the name of Oscar, and according to Wikipedia, which is where I go when I look for reliable information, the movie won 58 awards for various things. The main character, Amelie, was played by actress Autre. That's not how you pronounce it. I have an accent. How is that relevant? How is it not? Now shush, you're interrupting a lot. In the movie, Amelie is the sweet, shy, innocent, sort of invisible girl who works as a waitress and tries to change people's lives for the better because she's also a bit nosy and may have a bit of a superhero complex as a result of childhood trauma. But throughout the movie, she finds love, and we will accompany her for a full 2 hours in her journey. Now this film is rather peculiar, and we could mention many reasons why it's indeed a great film. For starters, it features a quirky depiction of Parisian life as opposed to the usual overplayed cliche of a mellow, cheesy, hopelessly romantic Parisian life that we see on literally every other film that includes the city of Paris and was made by non-French people. Again, no facts, but no doubts. The movie talks about things like isolation, kindness, and love constantly. As I said before, Amelie wants to make people happy, make them feel loved, seen, and appreciated. And so, her lovable character, who's always doing stuff for other people, but who seems to be pretty lonely herself, quickly makes us want for her to have all of the things that she tries to give others. On top of that, I'd say it's fairly easy to like her and her weirdness. It's not a groundbreaking fact that we tend to like other people if we can relate to them and their humanity, and what's more human than being flawed and weird? This girl likes to go to the cinema and look at the faces of people when they're unaware that they're being watched. She finds pleasure in dipping her hand into sacks of grain and piercing the top of a creme brulee with the tip of her spoon. And it's so very simple and quite comfortable too, to think of our own quirks in the face of someone like Amelie. Those things we do when no one is watching or when we feel safe in the company of our friends and loved ones. Seeing a character on screen that was not ideal by I suppose mainstream standards was incredibly refreshing to the 14-year-old me, and I did relate and still do a bit to Amelie. I really like the idea of the unconventional girl with the leading role. Gotta stop doing that. But back to the story. Thanks to Amelie's endeavours of trying to make people happy, she ends up meeting her neighbour, Raymond Dufayel, who is a reclusive painter with brittle bone disease, and Amelie tries to bring him happiness after he helps her find a guy who left a box with childhood memorabilia in her apartment decades earlier. She also persuades her father to follow his dream of travelling around the world by stealing his garden gnome and having a friend of hers who is a flight attendant take pictures of the gnome at various landmarks from all over the world and mail them to him. That's actually pretty cool. She does a couple more things for other people, like this girl she works with and a lady from her building, but other than the mostly superficial relationships that she has, it's clear that Amelie is a dreamer and likes to live in the imaginary scenarios that play inside her mind, but may not be so good at living her life and chasing after what makes her happy. Like when she meets Nino, the male protagonist. Their first encounter looks like it might be love at first sight, but it takes her a while to gather enough courage to actually face her feelings and be honest with him. It's much easier and perhaps even more comfortable to just imagine a world where things turn out the way she'd like without actually having to do anything to make it happen. Projecting much? Shush. And if you're interested in knowing more about other details, such as the colors used throughout the film, why it looks so green and red and yellowish all the time, or the use of the camera with those right in your face close-ups, there are a couple of videos out there that talk about it. Me? I'm interested in the music. At 14, I had just started to learn how to play the piano, and as a young, inexperienced pianist, I wanted to play something nice. I wanted to feel like I was making music and not just practicing my skills, which I rarely did, to be honest. And when I came across Yann Tiersen's music and I realized that his piano pieces weren't actually too difficult for beginners, I found my place, my home, and I started learning as many of his pieces as I could. I learned how to play the famous Comptine, Le dispute. Le noyee. Rue de Cascades. Bunch of other songs from his other albums that I don't really know how to pronounce, but I'll put the names over here, somewhere. And like I said, I couldn't play complicated pieces, but this I could play. Now, of course, back then I didn't know the difference between a soundtrack and film score, and I had no idea how music worked in films. But I didn't need to, because this soundtrack, which, by the way, I recently learned it wasn't composed for the film, not entirely, does an amazing job portraying the story that's being told. The music, from my point of view, allows us to experience what Amelie experiences as some sort of bridge between the characters, the story, and us. The director, Jean-Pierre Baguette, initially had a different idea for the music. He wanted the composer Michael Nyman to score the film, but he came upon Yann Tiersen's music by coincidence while driving with his production assistant, and immediately bought his entire catalogue, from which he chose a number of pieces to include in the film, and later commissioned him to compose some original music. And I was so captivated by Amelie's soundtrack by some unknown reason that I kept going back to it. Because even if half of the songs came from different albums that were composed years before the film was made, the music seemed to fit just right with the image. The experience of watching the film could essentially be extrapolated to the experience of listening to the soundtrack. Yeah, that's right, the music was telling us a story, and what a delightful story to hear. And I also have to say that his sound feels pretty French to me. I don't know how to explain this. Maybe it's just the accordion that we hear in some of the pieces, but whatever it is, it sounds like what I think Paris would sound like. Take for instance the orchestrated version of La Valse Amelie. It has an extraordinary instrumentation and it's so full of different textures and timbres, and the energy that it carries on this specific part feels like the kind of explosion of sensations and emotions that one would get if they fell in love in Paris. Yet again, no facts, no doubts. And I know it sounds cheesy, but this theme he wrote, Amelie's theme, or waltz, has been engraved into my mind since the first time I heard it over a decade ago. And it's funny how some songs end up being meaningless, even if at one point we swore that we'd never forget them because they were our favorites. And then we have those that we might have never expected to be so present, so important for us for whatever reason, that no matter what we do or how much time goes by, we can't seem to forget them, maybe even if we try to forget them. This piece is one of those for me. It's one of the first pieces that I learned how to play on the piano, and I memorized it in a way that I reckon I could go years without playing it or hearing it, but the moment I sit down at the piano and I play that first note, it would come rushing back to me. And I know this because it's happened. It might take me a couple of tries to fully remember it, but it's always there, alongside the infinite number of quirky, weird things that make me who I am. It's a nice reminder of the simple things in life that make us happy, make us unique, and the unknown ways, or in other words, the coincidences, that life is constructed upon. If you haven't heard the full soundtrack or, seen the movie, I highly encourage you to do so. It's a great film with interesting characters, beautiful cinematography, and fabulous music. You won't regret it. And that's it for today's video. Thank you very much for watching. If you are not subscribed yet, go ahead and click that big red button below. It's free. It's always going to be free. Well, hopefully. Also, leaving a comment and a thumbs up or down tells YouTube and me that you liked or disliked my video, and it's nice to know that someone other than my mom likes what I'm doing. Thank you very much for watching, take care, and until next time, bye. But no. Oh, Jesus Christ.